And we're ready for you, Kate. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you guys for all being here and for having me come present this webinar. And this is exciting for me because this is actually one of my first webinars that I'm presenting. So you're kind of like guinea pigs to me right now, but I think it'll go well. And this is pretty much the same training that I give to a lot of folks, but I have kind of adjusted it so that I talk a little bit about the housing stuff as well. And I'm also going to leave some time towards the end of the PowerPoint so that if you guys have some specific examples of cases or issues that you've run across that you really want to talk about, and hopefully maybe I can answer your questions that you have, or at least provide some guidance for you as well. So I hope you all can hear me and hope you all can hear this well. And so I will get started, but my name is Kate Tibbs and I am the program specialist for the Southwestern Vermont Hoarding Task Force in Rutland County. So that is that's a mouthful. So I typically, when I talk with clients, I like to let them know that I am the program specialist for our hoarding program. And I give them a little bit of information about what we do, but I will talk about that with you guys a little bit later, but I want to jump in and start talking about the basics about hoarding disorder itself and kind of, you know, what to look for and why people hoard in general. Okay, so this is the content of the PowerPoint. So again, we're going to talk about the basics, what to look for, why people hoard, some treatments that have proven to be helpful for folks, also homeowners and hoarding, the contact info for myself and for the task force, and also some resources that I have found very, very useful for my studies. They're internet and literature related resources as well. So, and actually I will start off right on the bat, and I'll mention, or you can see it here on the PowerPoint, but some of these photos have been taken by our Brock weatherization team when they have gone into homes to do weatherization, and these are some sorts of things that they encounter or have encountered when they've gone into homes. And obviously they've had to defer clients that are living like this because they cannot get to what they need to do the weatherization. So you will see some real life pictures throughout the PowerPoint as well. But to start off with, what is hoarding? Hoarding disorder now has become so prevalent in our society that it is actually included in the DSM-5 medical textbooks as a disorder on its own. And really how I like to describe hoarding disorder is when someone has difficulty discarding or parting with their possessions regardless of the value. So the value of the item could be extremely high and it could be very, very valuable, or the item could literally be trash and the person still regards it as something very important to themselves. And also another thing about hoarding disorder and what kind of distinguishes it from clutter or major clutter is that this is extreme and excessive clutter in the home to the point where it becomes unsafe and unhealthy. And that's for everyone that is in the home, including, you know, the person that is doing the hoarding themselves, or also pets in the home too. And unfortunately, there are cases where folks do hoard animals, and that's a kind of different topic in itself, but we're not going to get too much into that, but if people have questions on that, we can definitely discuss it later. And then a little bit more about the basics about hoarding and just how prevalent hoarding is it affects approximately 2 to 5% of the population, or about 1 in 20 people. And these are studies that have been formulated all throughout the country, and then also in other countries as well. And it is also very prevalent in Western society, and more so than in other societies around the world. And that could be for a number of different reasons. It could be just kind of, the culture that we have, where we are very environmentally friendly. Well, not everyone, but most people, where, the constant reduce, reuse, recycle, and reusing objects. But also too, we live in a society where new things are coming out all the time. So to get the new thing, discarding something, getting something new, or, essentially people with hoarding disorder, they like to keep holding on to things even if they get a new product. But it also has a very harmful effect on the person and also for their family members. These harmful effects could be emotional, physical, financial, and also social as well, affecting friendships with folks. And there's a little bit of difference between just, kind of regular hoarding and compulsive hoarding. When someone is compulsively hoarding and hanging on to things, they're really attempting to try to relieve their stress and anxiety. And I'll talk a little bit about that further on in the slides, but there is a lot of anxiety that comes with hoarding disorder. And we talked a little bit about the health and safety aspect of hoarding disorder. A lot of clutter will create falls and health and fire hazards, which obviously is a negative effect on the person's lifestyle. And the falls and health issues with that could also create a lot of emergency room visits or doctor visits as well. Let's see. We talked a little bit about how the quantity of the stuff really sets them apart from people who just collect things. There is a difference between a collector and someone who hoards things. And these are just few examples. I will say in most of my clients that I have been working with, actually for a few months now, the things that I run across the most are papers and clothes. I do run across the food aspect a little bit more, but it's really papers and clothes that I've been involved in. You can see this is another example of a photo that was taken at a home. This was actually in Bennington County that the weatherization team had taken. I don't know if you can see my little mouse moving around. I don't think you can. But you can see in that photo that the door is barely open on that right-hand side. And that obviously is a major safety hazard because there is no 36-inch space, or there is not a good way to exit that room at all. But to go on a little bit more about the characteristics of hoarding, I also like to tell people that one of the myths about hoarding disorder is that the person is just kind of lazy and they just don't want to do anything. And that might seem the case with some folks, but what I've come across is it's not a matter of the person being lazy. They don't have the motivation, and also that there's some other things that are going on with the person, not just their hoarding, but there's a lot of mental health issues going on as well. And these are some of the things to look for, some sort of characteristics to look for with hoarding that sets them apart from other people. But I mentioned before, anxiety, depression, having social phobias, those are all characteristics of hoarding disorder. The person might not have all of those, but I will say probably 95% of the people that I work with or that I have trained with have some sort of diagnosed anxiety disorder. And usually someone with hoarding disorder, they have experienced a very traumatic event in their life that kind of has, kind of spurs the hoarding to get out of control. And then also, as they progress with age, the older the person gets, the more the hoarding disorder kind of takes over their life and becomes more and more part of their personality. And also, I want to mention too, one of the myths that someone with hoarding disorder, they're a very isolated person. And that could be the case where the person, doesn't have a lot of people over because they're embarrassed about the way their home looks. So they don't like people coming over. They don't want family or friends in, even to the point where if their plumbing becomes an issue, that they don't allow the plumber to come in. So they try to deal with it the best that they can. And same with electrical appliances. But I will say that a lot of the people that I have met that have hoarding disorder, they are actually very personable people, and they're actually very sociable, and they like to go out and be with their friends or maybe be with their family members if their relationship is not very strained. They like to be a part of their community. But again, that's not everyone, but I will say that's probably a good chunk of the people that I work with. They are very, very sociable, and they're also very, very intelligent. So that's very interesting as well. Also, something to look for is, does the person have some sort of memory issue? Are they having a hard time remembering? Do they have a hard time remembering where they put things? And then also it could go to the extreme as well. I've worked with folks that, they don't remember where they put the mail that day, but they could tell you where they put the mail that they received, 5 years ago down somewhere. So it's very interesting, and it's very different from person to person. Let's see. We talked a little bit about putting off repairs and paying bills, but these are just some other characteristics to kind of look for. This is what I look for when I'm not necessarily out and about, but when I am at a person's home, or if I receive referrals from different agencies or even from family members. But one of the major things is, and I do a lot of collaboration with our local hospital, Rutland Regional Medical Center, because, they're starting now, when they're getting ER visits from folks, they're starting now to ask questions like, are you able to sleep in your bed, or do you have a lot of things around you? Are you able to walk around your home comfortably? Those sorts of things, to kind of get a better sense of what their home life is and determine why they're making so many emergency room visits. Those sorts of things. One thing I do look for if a person has a car is to see if they have items in their car, because there's a good chance that if their home is filled with things, that they are probably starting to put things in their car as well and using that as storage. It might look like the person is living in their car, and this actually can happen. I've met people that actually, their whole car is filled except for their driver's seat. And that's a whole nother danger in itself, not in the home, but, driving around and not being able to see out your mirrors or having other drivers see you as well. So, why do people actually hoard? That's one of the main questions people ask me. Why do people do this, or why am I doing this? And there's three major themes to hoarding, and that's sentimental, instrumental, and intrinsic. And I've met people that have all three of these themes going on in their life, and I've met people that have only one of these things going on in their life. So I always like to tell people that especially when you're working with humans, everyone is different. So their reason for doing things is gonna be different from other people's. They might be common in some ways, but all in all, it is different. But I will say that the most common one that I see and that I've read about is the sentimental attachment to objects, feeling like they have a important connection to people, places, and events that item was from. They might experience exaggerated attachment to the object to the point where, they might sort of describe the objects with personalities and feelings and things like that. And then also I hear a lot, of the just in case, I'm going to use this just in case. I might need this piece of paper for something else. I might need it for a scrap piece of paper. But when you have 200 scraps of paper, you need to have a conversation about that. And, newspapers, flyers, magazines, shoes, toothbrush. Sometimes it's very hard to argue those points, is because, okay, well, yeah, you might need that toothbrush, but do you need to hang on to 20 toothbrushes that, you've used and they're really no good anymore? But, hey, I might have to use that toothbrush to polish something. Some of the excuses that people come up with are very, very, very creative. And like I said, they can be very hard to argue. So part of my job is really kind of thinking outside the box and trying to reason with folks about not keeping 20 used toothbrushes that really probably shouldn't be used anymore. But also the last theme there is the intrinsic value. And this is not so common, but you do run across this with folks, is, there's really no use for the item, but the person views the item as being very unique or pretty or beautiful. So they have a really hard time letting it go. And I think these are all themes that, not necessarily people with hoarding disorder, but people have about their things in general. And also too, how I work with folks, I like to really put myself in the person's shoes. So I like to think about, okay, if I had someone coming into my home and looking at my stuff, how would I want them to react? So I really, really put that into perspective when I'm working with folks. And people ask me too, can you be treated with hoarding disorder? Is there a pill that someone can take that can help with hoarding disorder? And what they found out is medications, they work somewhat, but the medications are really used for other, coexisting illnesses like anxiety or depression, or OCD, something like that. But what they found is really the most effective treatment for people is one-on-one counseling or group treatment, but also, working in the CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy method, really getting down to why does this person feel this way about their things? Why are they behaving this way about their things? Or why are they, actively acquiring things? And also motivational interviewing, helping the person learn new behaviors. And I spend a lot of my time when I'm working with folks is developing a relationship with that person. The key part to it is gaining that person's trust, because you are really spending not a lot of time with the person, but you're spending some personal, intimate moments with the person, because you are going through their things. And even if you might deem it as trash or something that's not salvageable, that person may feel very, very differently about it. So, so motivational interviewing works very well. And then also, the person really has to want the help and be willing to change their behaviors as well. It's sort of the same thing when working with folks with substance abuse. You know, you can't really get very far with someone if they don't believe that they have an issue or they're not wanting to get the help. So it's kind of relatable to that as well. I spoke briefly about the medications. Again, that's not very effective, but it could help with some other stuff that's going on, which could in turn help with the hoarding disorder. But unfortunately, there is not a magical pill that says that you take and you say, oh, I'm cured. The hoarding disorder is gone. Unfortunately, it does not work like that. The more support from family, friends, community, anyone that is involved in the person's life in a positive way, the more support that they get from them, the better. And that's not the case for everyone. Sometimes when I'm brought into the picture, they've already burned their bridges with organizations or family members or friends. So they're kind of some people are kind of left with nothing at all, and they're grasping at straws. And fortunately, we now have a program here in Rutland County that can help these folks. But also, the earlier the treatment for the person, the better. So there is a rating scale that I will show you in a second that I like to go by, and it is a universal rating scale that was developed by some professionals, I believe at Smith University, over in, I believe that's Massachusetts. So I will show you that, and I also have a link to that as well. But the earlier the treatment, the better with the person. And, you know, there's some rules that I like to go by when I work with folks that seem to be very effective. You know, the people that are involved do not touch or throw items away without the person's permission. The client makes all decisions about their possessions. Categories are established before handling any of the possessions, and the client verbalizes all decisions that are to be made. And there are times where the client doesn't know and they're stuck. So I or whoever is involved in the team will help them work through that. But these sort of rules, so to speak, seem to be very effective with folks and seem to be working pretty well so far. But here is that rating scale that I was talking about. So as you can see, it goes from 1 to 9, 9 being the extreme, and obviously it can get worse than 9, but that's as much stuff that they had to create this scale. And it was actually kind of funny how they created this. They were at the college, and it was with students and a professor, and they had a dorm room, or well, it was an apartment. And what they did was they collected a bunch of stuff from the students participating in this activity and just kept filling it and filling it and filling it, so that they got these wonderful rating scales. But you know, how they like to present these to folks or to professionals is that when you go into a home and you see this sort of thing, if the person is on the rating scale between the 4 and the 5, that's when intervention should really happen with the person, because if they're at a 4 and a 5 right now, at some point they will get to a 9 or more, and it could be, you know, in a year, it could be in a month. It's really amazing how much or how quickly people can accumulate things. And also too, if you run into folks that are organized hoarders, as I like to call them, where their stuff, they have a lot of stuff, but it's neatly stacked or it's neatly packed up, but you know, you're still walking through goat paths, or you're stacking those things up on your bed and you can't sleep in your bed, or you're stacking those things in your bathtub and you can't take a shower or you can't take a bath. How they like to use that example, if you were to take all those things out of those bins and to kind of cover the floor or cover everything like they have in this image rating scale, where would they be at? You know, you got to kind of visualize it in your brain a little bit, but where would they be at on this scale? Even though their hoarding looks like a 3 right now, but if you were to take all the bins and dump them and spread everything out, you'd be surprised, because it could turn into a 7 or an 8 or a 9. And yes, there is a thing as a very organized hoarder. I've run into that as well. But let's see. So I want to spend a little bit of time talking about homeowners and hoarding, because I know this is what a lot of you guys typically run into, and it can be a little bit more problematic depending on the situation than with people that are renting or are tenants, because when you're renting, or if you have landlords or a property owner, when they get involved, that can be a little bit more leverage to get the person to accept the help and get their home into shape. But, you know, when you encounter a homeowner, you know, really the best thing to do is to voice your concern about the conditions of the home and talk about the consequences. And I know sometimes the consequences can be very upsetting for people, but if there are children in the home, DCF could be contacted and become involved because the home is unsafe or unhealthy. And same if there are elderly adults in the home, or adults who have developmental or physical disabilities, APS could get involved if someone makes a report to them. Asking the person if you can take pictures or videos, because this is important too, because the person may be somewhat blinded by the condition of their home, meaning that they don't really see the big picture, and they might not recognize that there's a problem. They might see that, okay, yeah, you know, I'm a little bit disorganized, but it's no big deal. Well, if you're so disorganized to the point where you're climbing over things, or you're tripping over, you know, papers or food or whatever it is that you're keeping, you know, there's really an issue there, and you'd be surprised by the amount of people that just really don't recognize the problem because they've been in the situation for so long. They're very used to it, so they don't think it's an issue. Also contacting the town health and safety officer. That is a good way to get the ball rolling, is to have them get involved. And sometimes it's a good cop, bad cop type, you know, scenario that you run into. You know, if the town health officer gets involved, you know, they might be a little bit more motivated to get things going because they don't want anything legal to happen. And also, if the person has family members or community members who they trust and who they have a good relationship at the moment with, getting them involved as well will help the situation. But I am hesitant to get family members involved right away if they haven't been involved, because it can be a tricky situation. It could be a situation that family members do not know what's going on, and they're totally out of the loop and they had no clue that their family member has been living like this. Family members might not want to get involved at all because they've tried to do it in the past and it just hasn't worked, and they're just fed up and frustrated and don't want to deal with it anymore. So kind of feeling out how, what the relationship is like with family members and friends is key as well. But getting them involved, if it's a good positive thing, that's a good approach as well. So, and we can talk a little bit more about homeowners and whatnot, because I imagine you guys have some situations you're in you might need some guidance on, but we can talk about that in a few minutes. I just wanted to kind of talk about the program down here, the task force, really what we do and how we help folks. So, part of my job is doing things like this, webinars, and also going to different organizations and doing PowerPoint trainings to folks in similar ways as I'm doing now. And again, depending who I'm training with, I will speak specifically to what they're asking for. So I think, training and educating the community and local organizations who are really involved with people and going into people's homes, I think that is one of the most important parts of my job is, showing and teaching people and talking to people how to work with folks with hoarding disorder. And also the task force meets monthly to discuss cases and, current cases and then possibly new cases. I have a number of different people ranging from council and aging to the community health team at the hospital to the town health officers, and also building inspectors. And I also have people from the Humane Society and also housing, like housing trusts and housing authorities are involved as well, and many more people. We have at least 30 people that are part of the Rutland County Task Force. So there are times where, people will come to the task force and they say, hey, I have this situation. What do I do? Who do I get involved? And it's a nice way to just kind of brainstorm cases and to develop, plans for people and see how we can best support that person. And also on our website, we have a list of resources and a list of people who are involved with the task force as well, and that's at www.brock.org. And then we also meet on the fourth Wednesday of every month from 10 to 11 a.m. here in Rutland at our Brock office. So if any of you are interested in ever coming down here to talk with me and see what we're all about, you're more than welcome to do that. And then also here, I have some good sources I have cited throughout the PowerPoint, but these sources are very, very helpful. So I strongly recommend that you guys take a look at them and read up on them as well. I'm a big reader, so there's actually a lot of good books out there to read as well. There's a couple of them that are sort of memoirs from folks that are dealing with hoarding disorder. So it's nice to go from, the research aspect and scientific aspect of hoarding disorder to reading about it from a person, their point of view and their struggles and what they have gone through and what they're doing to keep their hoarding disorder under control. So I just want to I can leave that up there, but I'm going to leave my contact information up. But I wanted to leave the rest of the time to talk about some certain cases that you guys are involved in or questions that you guys have. And if you have any questions on the PowerPoint as well, I know I kind of breezed right through that, but there's so much to talk about with hoarding disorder. I could spend hours on this, but I want to give you guys the opportunity to talk as well. So
thank you so much, Kate. That was great.
No problem.
I would love to encourage the folks that are on the webinar now to use the chat box and maybe even give some specific examples of things you've seen out in the field working with the families that you work with. And maybe if you have a specific case and have a question of what the recommendation would be on how to deal with that specific question. I think, while we have Kate here, utilize her expertise and share with the rest of the group. That would be great. So if you want to use the chat box for that purpose, I would appreciate that.
Yeah, that'd be great. I have the chat box open right now, and so I can talk a little bit about my caseload right now. I'm up to, let's see, I have 12 people on my caseload, and some of them I meet with 2 times a week. There are some I meet with 1 time a week, and then there's one person that I meet with every other week. So I'm working with a number of different folks on varying degrees of levels of hoarding. The people that I meet with twice a week, their situations are very, very extreme. One in particular, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the TV show Hoarding or Hoarders, or I forget exactly what the title of it is. Personally, I do not watch that show anymore because their approach with folks and how they work with folks is I don't really agree with. Just going in and cleaning a place out and providing minimal therapy or support, it seems to be very negative, and the cleaning out of a person's home fixes the immediate problem, but it doesn't fix the long-term issue. And so, I mean, if one of my clients requests a clean out, and if they want a group of people to come in and just, take everything out, we will do it. I did work with someone who we had, let's see, it was me and 3 other volunteers that came in and did a semi clean out for someone, but the person was really driving everything that we would pick up that wasn't obvious trash, and it was literally taking a snow shovel and shoveling things off the ground. I mean, this person, their house had a major rat infestation and mouse infestation, and so they made nests and beds out of everything. And this was also a home where they unfortunately did not have enough money for trash removal and nor trash bags. So they were putting all of their trash in like grocery bags and then just stuffing them into every corner or room that they could find. So so there was a lot of ample opportunity for rats to get in and make nice little homes. Unfortunately, I think the rats were living much better than the actual people in the home. So there was a lot of things that were destroyed. So we were literally shoveling things into garbage bags and throwing them in a dumpster. But I will say that house that I was in, where we had a couple of volunteers come in and clean it out a little bit, definitely could have been on the TV show. I know the TV show likes those extreme cases. So this was definitely extreme case. So I do tell folks that what you see on the TV show is definitely real. There are definitely people out there that live in those sorts of situations. I have a few clients that tell me that they like to watch the TV show because they know that their situation isn't as bad, and they like to gauge that show as, okay, I'm doing really good right now, but I feel like, oh, my kitchen might look like that right now and I need help. That sort of thing. But I really don't recommend the TV show to folks, just because, like I said, the approach that they take is not necessarily the best approach. It might be the best approach to some folks, but a majority of them, it is a slow process. So, I know there's going to be clients that I'm going to work with for at least a year, and that could be checking in on them every single week for a year to see where they're at and making sure that, they're doing okay. And, really the hope is, someone that I'm working with every week right now, maybe in 6 months, I'll only have to meet with them every other week. And then maybe in a few months after that, meet with them monthly, and then possibly just, every couple of months. And then eventually kind of walk away from the case, but leave it open to, hey, if you feel like you need my help, give me a call and let me know. But ultimately walking away from the situation, hopefully they're in a much better spot. But I could go on and on and on about my cases, but did anyone have any specific questions that they, needed some guidance on?
Yeah, I'm not seeing any questions come in.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I really appreciate your time. And like I said, we'll record this. And if there's staff members in your office that were not able to participate today, we'll put it on our website probably in about a little over a week, because I'm away next week. So thank you again for your participation, and I hope you all have a great weekend and stay dry out there.
Yeah, you too. I did want to mention real quick, though, that, in addition to this task force in Rutland County, there is one other task force in the state of Vermont that I'm aware of, and I did a lot of my training with them, and they're with the Burlington Housing Authority, and they're the Chittenden County Hoarding Task Force. And they've been doing this since about 2006 or 2009. I can't remember off the top of my head which year, but they've been doing this, and David O'Leary is the gentleman that heads the program up there, and they have a wealth of knowledge and resources as well. So if you guys, need his contact information, I am more than happy to share it, and we work very closely together, so any way that we can help you folks, just get in touch with us. And I really appreciate you guys having me, and I love having the chance to talk about, hoarding disorder and this issue, and, really, letting people know what it's all about and how to work with folks, because it definitely is an issue all around, and people are surprised by that. I get surprised by it still, but I hope you guys find it useful, and please don't hesitate to get in touch with me, via phone or email, or write to me. And if you have any other questions or anything else, or want to chat more, please get in touch.
Great, and thanks for mentioning that about the Chittenden County. I know our folks in Burlington do work with them closely, but it's another resource for folks that are maybe closer up in that area. Thank you, Kate. Perfect. And thanks, everybody.
You guys.
All right. Have a wonderful day.